good Thursday morning. The action continues in the NFL with all of the coaches that are flying around joining staffs. And here in New York, it has been crazy. Coordinators, I don't think we've ever talked about coordinators as much as we've talked about coordinators this week, as there's still some options out there and jobs to be filled, as unfortunately the guy that we all expected to be the offensive coordinator for the Giants, Todd Monken, gets the Cleveland Browns head coaching job. The Jets obviously still have to hire their offensive coordinators. Hopefully there is some resolution to that. The Knicks win again. Crazy how they came back in that game and blew away the Toronto Raptors late 4 in a row. And it happened. Full NBA psycho for Giannis Antetokounmpo yesterday, as Shams puts out he has indeed requested that trade, and now the Milwaukee Bucks are listening to aggressive offers and are ready to move on from the NBA superstar. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, G, and it's sad. I'm watching my hockey team go down the tank, and I know we got a lot to talk about in terms of football and everything else, but we saw Artemi Panarin, one of the great Ranger free agent signings of all time, play his last game in a Ranger uniform on Monday night against the Boston Bruins, as last night the Islanders just basically destroyed the Rangers. That's 3 in a row for them. They play again Thursday night, but at least we scored 2 goals. That's what you got to look at. It's silver lining spot, as Chris Drury has completely blown up this team, and his team doesn't trust the front office, doesn't trust the team. And, you know, for a team that has actually had a lot of success over the last 10 years and has had a culture of winning and brought in superstars, people that wanted to play here, this is going to be really interesting to see if he can attract free agents here, make the right trades, bring the right people in. And then, you know, is it more of a mess than what the Jets are right now? I mean, that's kind of like where I am as a fan. I'm speaking just as a fan trying to watch games and just get a feel for what's happening on the outside of the team. When I say the outside, the general manager part of the team and who's running what. And I know this is all Chris Drury doing this. He's basically splintered this locker room over the last 2 years. And now all of a sudden, you know, here we are, the remnants. And I went through this 8 years ago. We're going through it again, and it's no fun. And I know now how the Jet fan feels, because Jet fan wants answers. They want to know exactly what the hell their team is doing. And it's really interesting thinking about the amount of defensive coordinators they have talked to and what they ended up with and how they ended up with this guy. And the fact that he's never done this before, and the fact that I guess Aaron Glenn wants to call defensive plays. So that means he's bringing in a very strong offensive coordinator. You and I think we know who it is, and everybody else out there thinks we know who it is. But, man, it's like shuffling the chairs in the deck of the Titanic right now. And, I mean, it looks so unorganized and so bad, and the perception is so awful for both teams, the Rangers and the Jets. I mean, it's ridiculous about how things are being perceived and what they look like and how you feel when you're talking about them.
Yeah, but the most concerning thing is you don't think that there's anybody over there who knows what they're doing outside of Darren Muji, and I'm not even sure if he knows what he's doing because he's letting all of this happen on his watch. I mean, some of these things that I have heard, it's just insanity. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but there was some more clarity where Wink Martindale is so convinced he's getting the defensive coordinator job. I heard Connor Hughes on with Evan, Tiki, and Sean yesterday. He's so convinced he's getting the defensive coordinator job, he starts reaching out to coaches. Like you said, the guys you wanted to bring in. Hey, pack your stuff. We're ready to go. We are going to the Jets. We're back in the NFL. And then Aaron Glenn talks to Wink. Wink gets on like a flight, like an overnight flight to come here. And then Aaron Glenn tells him, no, I'm calling the defense. What? You can't do that with a veteran coach who's been doing this forever. If you hire Wink Martindale's your defensive coordinator. I mean, that's a total, utter insult to a guy like that. Reaching out to John Gruden to be an offensive assistant
who did
under
that?
Aaron Glenn? I don't know.
Who actually reached out to John Gruden?
I asked you this
I don't know.
yesterday. It was my first question. I need to know because if it's Woody Johnson, there's a whole set of problems there. If it's Aaron Glenn, there's a set of problems there. I mean, and then you end up with a guy who I know he was a wide receivers and secondary coach, but he was a wide receivers coach last year within the division. Was anybody else talking to this guy to be their defensive coordinator, or is he just a lackey who's going to stand there and get Aaron Glenn his coffee at 7:20? Like, Al gets yours.
No, well, I mean, this is really interesting. I mean, it's interesting. It's also frustrating.
And then you got one of your best friends in your life, who you say is one of the nicest and smartest individuals you've ever been around, somehow wants to be a part of this, which makes no sense. So if the only way that it could make sense to me is if he gets they back up the truck for him and give him a long contract, and it's guaranteed, obviously, and the fact that Frank is so nice that he wants to pull Aaron Glenn out of this football quagmire and help him turn this team around. That's the only way.
Here's, the characteristics of Frank Reich are loyalty, commitment, teammate, great teammate. He and I battled for the position at Maryland for 2 years down there, 3 years actually. 3 years at Maryland, and we were roommates.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Never stabbed me in the back. Never felt that. Always pushed me. Always made me better. Made me a better player, better person living with him. Kept me out of a lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. I mean, like he could have basically stabbed me 100 different ways over, and could have led me down a path of just complete and utter personal destruction, and never let that happen. And that's why I'll always be so loyal and so strongly supportive of him. And the thing I do know about him is that he's not out for anybody's job. Like he's not out to fight anybody, or he'll give you his resume. He'll give you all the things that he's accomplished in his life, both off the field and on the field. He's very, very proud of all of those accomplishments. But he's not like – so just to put this in perspective, there are certain coaches that have a reputation. Like Wink Martindale has a reputation. Jim Schwartz has a reputation. Greg Williams has a reputation. You have to know those guys in order to be able to work with those guys really, really well, because they are going to be headstrong. They're going to want to do things their way. And if you don't agree with that and you're the head coach, you're going to end up being like Brian Daboll and having to fire Wink Martindale if he doesn't do what you want him to do, or he's out on an island, or he's going behind the back, and talking to other people within the building saying this is wrong. Now, it's kind of like whistleblower situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just never know. Like, and as I've been told, about all of this is that, the thing in Cleveland, like Jim Schwartz thought he was getting that job. And when he found out that Todd Monken was getting that job, and Todd Monken had told the Cleveland brass there and Jimmy Haslam, hey, look, I'd be more than happy to keep Jim Schwartz as my defense coordinator. Jim Schwartz is like, get the F out of here. I ain't staying here. I'm out of here. Like, this is total BS. I mean, he thought he had it. So, that's why. And other coaches that had applied for that job, they were saying, we want to keep Jim Schwartz as our defense coordinator. And they were saying, no, I don't want him. And that's why they fell out of those jobs. I don't want Jim Schwartz on my staff. I can't trust him. And the reason I say that is because maybe like people like Mike McDaniel or Davis Webb or whoever interviewed for that job had been told either by their agent or by other coaches in the league that you don't want that guy on your staff if you're the head guy. You see what I'm saying? Especially if you're a first-time head guy.
Yeah.
The one thing about Todd Monken, at least he's a little bit older and a little bit more experienced and has been around, quite some time, over 20, 30 years in coaching. So at least, he knows, how to handle people. And I think that's one of his strengths as a coach. So I'm happy for Todd. I feel bad for Jackson Dart and the New York Giants because he would have been the perfect offensive coordinator. And now the Giants have got to pivot and they got to find their own offensive coordinator somewhere out there. And again, I don't know who the Harbaugh ties are. I heard all these different names. Here's the one thing that I don't want for Jackson Dart. The one thing that I do not want for Jackson Dart is I don't want a college play caller. I do not want a college offensive coordinator.
Well, that would be Charlie Weiss Jr.
And I have nothing against Charlie Weiss Jr. I have nothing against Charlie Weiss Sr. Love him to death. Great people. Charlie Weiss Jr. did a great job for Ole Miss, stayed there and, took the team through the playoffs. I think he's got the job at LSU now. I think he's down there with Lane Kiffin. I do not want a college play caller it being the first-time offensive coordinator in the NFL with the New York Giants for Jackson Dart. I want somebody who knows the NFL, understands the NFL, and maybe Charlie Weiss Jr. does, but I don't want a first-time play caller in the NFL calling plays. I want what Caleb Williams and what Drake May had. Caleb Williams had Ben Johnson, and Drake May had Josh McDaniel. And that's exactly the type of guy that I want for Jackson Dart. Todd Monken would have been that guy, but there are other guys out there that have NFL experience that could call plays and get the best out of Jackson Dart. So, the Giants, I hope they do the right thing and they bring in a professional NFL offensive coordinator under these circumstances.
Yeah, I trust John Harbaugh to make the right decision. This is the exact opposite of the New York Jets, where I don't think anybody over there knows what is going on. I think that John Harbaugh is going to make the perfect decision for Jackson Dart, and you trust him. It does stink, though, because we expected Todd Monken to come here and stay here because he never got a head coaching opportunity, and probably the only place he'd ever get that head coaching opportunity would have been in Cleveland, because no one wants that job, just like no one really wants to come here to the Jets.
But you find out that if you got the job, you were going to inherit Jim Schwartz.
Yeah.
If they didn't go with Jim Schwartz.
Right, and I don't blame, just like I don't blame Tanner Engstrom when he was told that he was going to get demoted and to stay in the organization, say, I'm out of here. Same thing with Jim Schwartz. I don't blame him either. So I don't know how they're going to fix that, or if they're going to, they have maybe co-head coaches out there or something stupid, because it is the Cleveland Browns. They're capable of anything. But I mean, it's just no surprise that the two biggest disasters in the NFL are once again the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. It's the same thing.
Well, it's not
they never get out of their own way.
I know it's not fair, and I saw a lot of people questioning the hiring of Todd Monken. That's not fair either. I mean, he's been around, he's paid his dues. It would be like Lou Anarumo getting a job.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the Todd Monken hire that's the problem. It's leading Jim Schwartz down a path thinking he's getting the job, and then telling him he's not getting the job, and now the guy that you wanted to keep is so pissed off at you because of this process and the way that it went that he doesn't want to go. He wants to go, rather, doesn't want to stay.
I wonder if Jim Schwartz turned down other interviews.
Probably.
Yeah, he may have. I don't know. This is wild, man. This is wild what's happening in the NFL. It makes no sense. And, I think the Jet story will end up, getting fixed here, at least offensively, hopefully within a short period of time, and things will work out. But right now, I mean, I'm like everybody else. I'm just like in utter shock as to how it's going down and what's going on. And you don't hear anything from Darren Muji at all. The GM is like he must be totally just player side.
Yeah, it seems like Aaron Glenn is in charge. in charge of this whole coaching staff with no input from Muji.
The 33rd team is getting involved here, like they did at the beginning of this, and recommended Aaron Glenn to be hired?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a really good question, actually. I'm not sure if they were retained as consultants after the hiring of Aaron Glenn. But if you can't be anybody who's been in the NFL like Darren Muji's been in the NFL and part of successful organizations and look at this and think that this is going well.
Well, Darren Muji was there in Denver when he saw Nate Hackett. He saw what that looked like. He saw what it looked like with him and Russell Wilson. I mean, so he's obviously been exposed to things that don't work for whatever reason, whether it be personalities that don't trust each other, don't like each other, can't push each other. It's amazing that Russell Wilson went to Denver because Denver could not get Aaron Rodgers from Green Bay because he wanted to stay one more year there. Denver hired Hackett as the head coach thinking that, they could get Aaron Rodgers. And then the fallback was Russell Wilson, and you're putting him with a coach they've never met. I'm assuming they never met before. They don't know each other. And Nate Hackett obviously does not have the head coaching personality or the chops to be a head coach in the NFL. And that thing just completely deteriorated. Now, Darren Muji was through all that and stayed when Sean Payton came in.
That's right. And maybe he's feeling like you've got another guy that is completely in over his head. One of the things I'd love to know, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, is did Aaron Glenn himself say, I got to get some veterans on this staff, like Wink at first and like Frank, because that's what this team needs? Or did ownership come down and say that season was an atrocity? You didn't look like you had any idea what you were doing. You cannot have a coaching staff like you had last year, you better bring in some people with some resumes and clean this thing up. Like, because I'd almost feel better about Aaron Glenn if he got the directive from the owner that we know has no idea what he's doing, as opposed to Aaron Glenn doing this on his own, because that means then you've got an owner who doesn't know what he's doing and a head coach who doesn't know what he's doing. Because that's just for Aaron Glenn to be around the NFL as long as he's been around, and to do that to Wink Martindale is pure disrespect. It really is. And that's just idiocy. To take this guy who is a strong personality, who has been in the NFL, who has been in college, that most NFL fans know who he is as a defensive coordinator.
It's like the second coming of, Rex Ryan. He's the old school lunatic defensive coach.
And everybody, a lot of people know who he is. He's never been a head coach.
Yeah, well, there's a reason.
And, yeah, because he's rough around the edges. But to have him fly in and say you're going to be my defensive coordinator just to tell him that I'm calling the defense and I'm running the defense is, you can't. There's not a single coach in the NFL outside of Aaron Glenn that would do something like that. You know it. I know it.
I can only think of one reason for that.
Okay.
Yeah. I can only think of one reason for that.
One reason for
what's going down here. That's I'm just.
All right, well, I'll float an idea to you.
Okay. All right.
Can I float an idea to you or no?
You got your own idea?
I do have my own idea. My own idea is that they just fired 9 coaches that they have to pay. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Aaron Glenn is a defensive guy.
Yes.
So he feels like he could call the defense. You're going to have to pay guys like Wink Martindale and Frank Reich a lot of money. So if you are Aaron Glenn and you go up to Woody Johnson, assuming this is all Aaron Glenn and not Woody Johnson, and you say, Wink wants $7 million a year to be a defensive coordinator, Frank wants 10 to be the assistant head coach.
All right, well, first of all, those numbers are way too inflated.
But you know what I mean?
Yes.
That it would be an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
And then ownership goes, what are you nuts? You just fired 9 guys that we have to pay, and I know there's offset language, but still. And now you want these 2 guys to come in after we gave you a massive contract? And then Aaron goes, okay, sorry, Wink. I'm going to call the defense. I'm going to hire this dude from Miami that no one even knew existed. And he's going to have an office, a little closet office next to mine, like we have with the Sports Minutes over here. We get our makeup done. We'll just cram him in there. And then I'll take the money and I'll give it all to Frank Reich because the only way he's coming here is if we pay him handsomely. How's that sound?
I was going to say budgetary. I think it's right. I think you're right on spot. I think you're right spot on with that.
Budgetary reasons.
I do. I think. I mean, like you got like every coach has a budget. Like the Giants just busted their budget for their coaches and coaching staff.
Oh hell yeah!
They just busted it. They just gave their head coach $20 million a year for 5 years. They're buying his credibility, his personality, his steadiness, his professionalism, his name. They're spending all that money for those 18 years of success that he had in Baltimore to bring credibility and to bring some professionalism back to the organization so they could sell it to their sponsors, they could sell it to their season ticket holders, and they could sell it to the players that they have on the roster. And hopefully he will have a huge impact on the draft because one thing the Ravens have done really, since Ozzie Newsome took over down there and then Eric DeCosta came in after, they've always had really good drafts. They've always found key players, especially late in rounds, like guys like Bart Scott.
Mm-hmm.
They found guys like that just turned out to be great pros. So that's why the Giants did what they did. So that was the budget. The budget was blown through by the ownership, by Chris Mara, by John Mara, by the Sish family, the Koch family. They basically said, go get the guy that we need to reestablish who we are as a franchise. And that's why John Harbaugh was worth that much money. Now, given that they gave Aaron a 5-year deal, I think it was like 5 years, $60 million or something like that.
There's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money
for a guy who's never done it.
That's exactly right. And Woody stepped up and spent the money on Aaron Glenn and probably spent a reasonable amount of money on the coaching staff and maybe not so much money on the offensive and defensive coordinators, just simply because one was never an offensive coordinator in Tanner Engstrom, and the other one, Steve Wilkes, was like I don't know what he was. I don't know what that was.
A nomadic disaster.
Right, exactly. So I don't think those guys are all that highly paid. But if you're trying to get either Wink or Frank or both of them, you're going to have to pay them the money that it would require to pay somebody with those reputations. And if you had to pick one and you were the defensive coach and you think you could call defensive plays and you could save some money on defense, then it does make sense to me the way you're thinking.
Yeah, not good. But if you end up getting Frank in here, obviously we like that. Even if you didn't have the relationship, it would be someone to solidify
I got
at least
all
the
these
offense.
text messages yesterday from the writers over there, like, just wondering, like, and I'm like, guys, what about my life? What about me? I mean, what if he does this? God bless him. I'll support him, of course. But man, oh man, oh man,
you can handle it. What are we talking about? Phone calls? You can handle that. That's what you're afraid of?
What do you mean, what am I afraid of?
Well, you're like, what about my life? What do I have to deal with? What do you have to deal with?
Well, I got to deal with, like, the Jets. Well, my best friend, one of my best friends is the offensive coordinator, if it happens.
Yeah, I know. But, I mean, and if it goes south, it's like, all right, people call up and say, I want Frank Reich out, and you'll say, well, okay, fine. And the world will keep on spinning.
Yes, I know.
It'll be
I
okay.
told you when he went through the interview process the first time with Todd Bowles, I was like, man, I picked him up over there.
Yeah.
So that guy goes, man, it went great, man. I said, oh, God.
Well, here you go. It's happening now. Feels
I don't
like
know.
it.
We'll see.
No, it feels like it.
We'll see.
Hey, I told you that Storm was going out to sea. I'm telling you, Frank Reich's taking that job.
Yeah, you are kind of talking that Storm out to sea, man.
I told you. Listen, man.
Kind of proud of you.
Well, exactly. And thank you, because you're doubting my weather prowess, and I'm on top of it.